Spacefarer. What the UFO? I'm speaking with Michaud today. Michael is a former professional diplomat, a foreign service officer of 32 years, and the author of a book I really like called Contact with Alien Civilizations: Our Hopes and Fears About Encountering Extraterrestrials. So I'll put this up visually, I think, today, and I'll put it in the description. Michael is joining us via voice only, so we're going to have a phone call. And Michael, it's been really great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to do so.
Thank you, sir. I was wondering if we could first I'll broadly outlay what I would like to talk about today. Part one is your book, Contact with ET, how you think about it now, all the wonderful details you went into, some of the things that are still ringing in your mind these days. Part two is the UFO phenomenon and where your work intersected with that, which I gather is sort of lightly. So we might not delve too deep into this area, but I'm quite curious about how you think about it, especially in light of the recent news of the last, say, 10 years. And then part three, I'd love to do hypotheticals, draw on some of your deep expertise in both the diplomatic area and in your careful thinking about extraterrestrials to play out some imaginary potential futures if UFOs turn out to be extraterrestrials, or some of them do. I'd like to ask you what we should do about that. So that's my broad roadmap for this conversation. But I thought I'd start just to work our way in a little bit by asking about your background as a diplomat, and particularly I'm curious to see that you helped write the first SETI protocol. Your bio in your book says you coordinated drafting of the first SETI protocol, which outlined our potential responses to finding any such signals. And I'm so curious about how you got into that area of work and how your diplomatic career led you in that direction. Would you like to just enlighten us on those fronts?
Sure. Let me explain first that I got interested in the question of UFOs when I was young and was not able to do much with it at that age. And since then, what I've kept up with is the more rational discussions of the contact issue. And then I discovered that many people have very superficial ideas about what this means, because I would guess they have been heavily influenced by Hollywood and by television, and those sources are not always accurate. And we're still dealing with a hypothetical. I realize a lot of people are aware of recent events, such as the tracking of objects in the atmosphere with gun cameras that has made such a stir in this field. But I would say to your listeners, please be cautious about what this is. I certainly do not know what those little objects were, and I don't think most of the community has a very good fix on it. But one thing that was clear was that those very rapidly moving objects were small, and they were unlikely to house a living being. And this is actually consistent with our own search, in that we're first, if we see anything, it's likely to be a limited phenomenon, an odd frequency in radio, or some other piece of evidence that is not 100% understood, and that is not necessarily proof that we are being visited. I've watched this field for a long time now, just on the outside, and a lot of enthusiasts have jumped at the slightest sign of good evidence and concluded that we are being visited regularly by UFOs. I've watched that literature over the years, and I am skeptical of almost all of it. On the other hand, I keep open the possibility that contact could be real someday. And there are many different ways contact could happen. And as finding a rapidly moving object in our atmosphere is very interesting, but I'm not sure what it is. And I think many of our colleagues are not sure what it is. And over the years, because of the nature of my profession, I've had to be a realist about what was happening around me and what I could report on. And I'm skeptical about a lot of off-the-wall theories that people have enunciated over the years. And I'm urging your audience to keep their minds open on this. I'm saying, as I did in the book, that we should listen, we should watch, because someday we might find real evidence. I am not convinced that we have found convincing evidence yet. So I'm sorry if I disappoint some of your listeners, but that's 32 years of skeptical diplomat. So I hope we can keep this on a general level, which is we're talking about something that might happen. We're talking about something that might have happened and been inaccurately observed. But the evidence is not what most of us would call hard. And I'm urging people to keep their minds open and not rush to adopt one particular theory, particularly UFOs, but to keep their minds open and to think about the various ways contact could take place. You know, if you look into the conventional search, like the one by the SETI Institute in California, they are skeptical about the evidence themselves. They are cautious. They don't jump to conclusions on the basis of fragmentary evidence. I think that's the right stand to take with this subject. We've seen a lot of strange things in our atmosphere and in the space around us, but none of them have met scientific standards of proof that we are being visited by aliens, even though I keep open the idea that someday that is conceivable and it might happen, though it's probably going to be different from the scenarios that Hollywood has given us.
Yeah, one hopes, because some of those scenarios are fairly bleak.
Yes, there are two broad themes in Hollywood's treatment. One is that there are people from very far away who have come to the Earth and who are happy to engage with us in one way or another, but they always may remain somewhat mysterious. And then there's the other Hollywood theory, which is that we're likely to be invaded and that there will be some kind of a war. I'm skeptical about both of those. What we do need to look for is hard evidence that actually reflects an image in the radar or a signal that actually fits in what we know about electromagnetic signals, and watch for evidence that fits in one of those categories. there are serious people who have devoted much of their lives to the contact question. But from everything I've seen, we have no proof yet that meets scientific standards.
Yeah, I think that's right from my perspective as well. I'm very, very interested in this subject, and I'm pretty open to the possibility that there might be some genuine engagement going on here with non-human intelligence. But I agree that we don't have the science that we want. What surprised me coming into it was everybody's strong impression that there is nothing going on. I always assumed, as an uninformed skeptic, that was founded in rigorous science that had turned up nothing. And what I was surprised to discover when I engaged with the subject was that there was less science than I thought. That we had, basically like a fair amount of government research, but very little public science research. And I've been speaking with scientists as part of this program who would really, really like to test some of their ideas. They've got some really good theories and some really good specific kinds of signatures that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And they're in a real funding snafu right now. They're working on it, but only a few of them have gotten actual money to do anything about this. So one of the most important rocks to push up a hill, I think, at the moment is to just get funding to these scientists who are now finally starting to be publicly quite interested in it. And those are the types of experiments that are going to yield us potential sort of next steps here. So I'm glad to hear I think we're pretty much on the same page there. I'm not a wide-eyed believer, but I would say that I've taken a large amount of potential explanations from the sub-basement of almost certainly can't possibly be true to the next level up of, well, I'm willing to at least consider the potential that this might turn out to be real. And that covers a really wide range of phenomenon, which I will not bore or terrify you with here. I'm sure you've thought about most of these things yourself. But well, go ahead. Want to hop in?
I was going to say, you're pretty much describing my position as well. I've watched this since the 1950s, and wow. A lot of claims have been made on the basis of very slender evidence. And I have yet to see a credible artifact of a alien craft or any other sign of the presence of aliens in the neighborhood of the Earth. But let's remember what we're doing. We're listening for what we can detect, which are mostly radio signals, also some other ways of measuring activity deep in space. And no scientist I know who's really professional has said this meets our standards. On the other hand, I realize that it's risky for them to do that because it might destroy their scientific reputations. So it's an awkward situation.
Sorry, just to push on that, you were asking, I think you were saying that we haven't found any signals that meet scientific standards of suggesting intelligent transmission. Is that what you were saying there?
Yeah, the evidence is very thin from the radio search. If there were real evidence out there, the folks who work at the SETI Institute, for one, would certainly want to publicize it, and other people would too. But they don't. They're not doing that, and they are maintaining credibility, despite the fact that many of them believe this must be true someday, and we will encounter somebody. On the other hand, there's been almost no discussion of the related thing, which is direct contact through interstellar vehicles. that right now is a fantasy. We don't know how to do that, and therefore we're not quite sure what we're looking for.
Mhm.
But I would be skeptical about that until we have a good imagery showing
Mhm.
a visitor. And I have not yet seen um, high quality video or stills or radar signals that back up the theory.
Yeah, I think we're still kind of in our infancy in terms of astrophysical imaging. The James Webb is amazing, but we can't turn it on Oumuamua, or we weren't able to get good imagery of Oumuamua when it came through. So that was, I think, the closest thing we have so far to evidence that we might have had an interstellar, like, technological visitor. And we should note that even that case, which Avi Loeb published a book about, was extremely contentious within the scientific community. And to hear Avi Loeb describe it, this thing did some very strange maneuvers that should not have been possible from a non-technological object. But many scientists really don't like that explanation, and they don't like even entertaining the idea. So one of the harder parts for me engaging with this space is that sort of intellectual rigor and careful skepticism can border on almost like a faithful zeal that rejects all potential hypotheses that are extraordinary, basically. And what feels more natural to me is that we should entertain extraordinary hypotheses, and then if we don't find evidence for them, we should let them go. But to rule things out kind of before we've found evidence one way or the other seems strange to me. And I've been a little surprised at how sort of, I don't know, biased the scientific community has been against the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Does that ring true for you at all? Or do you feel like people are calling balls and strikes?
Yeah, you're right. This has been a subject of embarrassment for a number of scientists who don't want to be credited with saying there are UFOs in our atmosphere. Um, that would discredit them in their own professions. But there's a good reason for demanding a high standard of evidence, which is that if this were ever proven to be real, it would be a major event. And it would certainly um, get people's attention if we had good imagery or even good radio signals that were credible evidence of ET.
Mm-hmm.
Remember also that um, if there are other civilizations in around stars that are maybe very far away, this has to be put in a context. We have to be sure we're not seeing just a scientific phenomenon and mistaking it um, on whatever that name was for the rock that came through our solar system, which, by the way, was foreseen by the science fiction writer Arthur Clarke. He wrote a novel about this in which there really was a extraterrestrial ship, but it was not here to visit us. It just what made a loop around our sun and headed back out, which is pretty much the plot of Rendezvous with Rama. So one of the side implications is that we may be of very little interest to a very advanced civilization with technology that we can barely envision. Give this time, because they're deploying more and more good, powerful instruments of astronomy and radio tracking that are on a curve to be able to spot more smaller objects over a wider range of frequencies, and their descriptions may be ones we're not presently looking for, because we have to deal with the instruments we have. The big radio telescopes are the symbol of that. But people have looked for others, like laser signals. And I've suggested that they should pay some attention to the ancient visitor to our solar system theory. If they left any kind of record behind. So far, we have not found any such thing, to my knowledge. So a little skepticism has to stay in the field.
Yeah, I think that's wise. There's all this smoke, like millions and millions of little data points that could qualify as smoke, from Egyptian hieroglyphs that seem to depict a visitation, to all the thousands of years of narrative religions that involve creatures coming from outer space, to like reports in the past few hundred years of extraordinary sightings, and especially in the past 100 years of UFO events. But we're still missing that smoking gun. The thing that this is kind of personal, but the thing that I want to push scientists on when I talk to them and they stay neutral is neutrality is it's a perfectly sane intellectual position, but what you advocate for is relevant to the development of science. So I've talked to some scientists who sort of just don't want to ruffle any feathers and say, well, we haven't proven it one way or the other, and that's fine. And I want to hear them say the next sentence which is, we should look into this and we should investigate it further to get more information.
Well, it does register in many scientific minds, but they have to protect their reputations, because they can wind up being left behind professionally. And that will continue to be true.
Until we get some smoking gun evidence.
Yeah. Consider how recent we are in playing this game. The first scientific article that recognized that we send powerful radio signals out because of radars was jumped on by UFO advocates, saying these are signals from another civilization. And in 1959, two physicists proposed that if there are any signals, we are now able to detect some of them if they're within our technical capacity. And our technology keeps getting better, particularly in visual astronomy, but also radio astronomy. We're looking at exoplanets now, which was unthinkable 40 years ago. We know how to study planets in orbit around other stars that are 20, 30, 40 light years away. And people are looking for evidence not of technology, but of life. And that could be far more widespread than UFOs. And it could be more real to the scientists if it fits with theories that we have of how life emerged on the Earth, how it developed in its very complex ways, and the kinds of signals it left behind in its atmosphere. So this is the kind of keep your mind open area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if we do start seeing that type of signature frequently, it should accordingly, it'll affect the inputs to the Drake equation, and it should affect our instincts about how many technological civilizations there might be out there, then I think it also needs to necessarily interact with our probability guesstimates about the possibility of visitation here that's happening on a sort of subtle level. I quickly wanted to mention that one Hollywood model that almost, I think, rings right for me is about half of the idea of the Avatar series. Have you seen any of the James Cameron Avatar movies? I guess there are only two right now.
I'm sorry, I don't think I have.
Okay, well, the premise is basically that humans visit an alien planet and go undercover as local aliens to like learn about their civilization and then ultimately to exploit their natural resources. It's a tough, like, kind of hard hitting environmental cautionary tale.
Sure.
But what struck me about it is that it feels intuitively right that if we were to visit a planet with an intelligent species, that our first interaction with that species would likely take the form of some kind of spy craft and military reconnaissance. I think we would be unlikely to immediately land on the Purple House lawn or whatever and say, hello, we're from another star and here's our technology. It seems intuitive to me that we might kind of check them out carefully first for probably a sustained period of time. So that model maps to me conveniently onto what we've heard about UFO behavior in the last 100 years, or even the last few hundred years, if you're willing to entertain the reports from like the 1800s, which is to say it's possible that if we are being visited, we're being visited in sort of a reconnaissance capacity, and that maybe non-human intelligence is deliberately trying to, so to speak, fly under the radar, sometimes literally, and observe us without being counter-observed. I guess I'd love to bounce that intuition off you. Is that a possibility that you've entertained? Does that seem to map onto the evidence as you perceive it?
Well, that's also from Star Trek, because they have the prime directive: don't disturb a civilization you discover.
Which is typically the first thing that the Star Trek captains do, is land and disturb the civilization. But it is theoretically their prime directive.
Yeah, exactly. And, the discovery that is made by them may be the result of years, centuries even, of observation of other solar systems looking for something like a civilization with technology. We don't know that's going on right now. It requires, at the other end, a commitment of resources, which is very real in terms of getting government programs started or even private ventures. It's going to cost money. And how high is this a priority at the alien remote society that may be far beyond us technologically? And go back to the history of radio, and up until about 1877, we didn't know there were radio waves. It was discovered scientifically. And they were mysterious when they were first discovered, but then they found physical phenomenon that they could look at with scientific eyes. And now we take radio for granted. Well, that's less than a century that we've been looking at those signals, and we still haven't had any confirmation. At the same time, I think it's admirable to continue a search using whatever the best technology is that we have, and accepting the results, whether they're positive or negative. The SETI Institute and others have been looking at other solar systems for decades, hoping to find a signal or some other evidence. And despite their best efforts, they have never claimed that they found it. It is still an unknown. And when you consider that civilizations do not advance in lockstep, they some of them, if they exist, are much older than ours. Um, they could have had radio technology or something better um, thousands or even millions of years ago. And we might never know that because we're looking for the wrong kind of signals. So this debate is still open. And that's my bottom line is let's insist on good evidence, but keep the debate open.
I agree. You make the point in your book that because of that sort of technological drift across thousands of years, we could reasonably expect that if we do find a signal, it will likely be from a civilization within a few thousand years of our own development, just because it suggests that we would be operating by within like some order of magnitude similarity of our technological capabilities. I thought that was cool, an interesting idea. I'm curious what you think about the messaging project, because I come to your work through Dr. Michael Bolander, who's an international criminal law professor. He cites you very heavily in his work.
Right.
He's a very big fan of yours. And I gather that the two of you might have, because you're both like international policy guys, it seems to me like you have maybe a preference for some kind of international policy around these projects to both receive and, more importantly, send any kind of messaging out into the stars. And I have talked to at least one scientist who was sort of blithely unconcerned about that. And Dr. Bolander's point was these scientists are making this decision unilaterally, basically, right now. And it stands to reason that we should maybe at least attempt to engage in some sort of collective project of deciding whether we as a species would like to be sending these messages out. Do you have similar instincts about that? Would you like us to have a policy framework?
I'm the author of the first SETI protocol, which appeared back in the 1980s. And it was a sketch in a formal document of what we should do if we think that we have found a signal. And in those days, it was all radio. And that got around the community. But we had some astronomers who said they didn't want to be regulated by any international body, and they do what they damn pleased. But it still set a precedent for responsible behavior. So the first step in the process was confirmation that there really is a signal. And then scientists can analyze the signal. They can call it some natural phenomenon, or more interestingly, the product of technology performed by intelligent beings of one kind or another. And that other people have rewritten that document a few times. But it's still out there. It's the International Academy of Astronautics, which is based in Paris, keeps track of this. And they see themselves as the depository for hard evidence. Although, if hard evidence is found, it's probably going to be released very quickly by some observatory or group of scientists because they want the publicity that goes with it. And that's inevitable given the structure of human society. All I'm saying is try to have some standards of credibility about whatever evidence it is that you saw or otherwise collected.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the people who are starting to look for UFO evidence in a scientific way are probably looking to the SETI community as a roadmap. I'm thinking about like the Galileo project or Skywatcher, or I've been in contact with the UAPX guys, who are a couple of physicists from Albany or the University of Albany at New York at Albany. Anyway, I think there is a group now of people who would love to, as you say, break the news that they had some hard evidence, and we might find out quite quickly, which would be great, because the current situation, as the UFO community perceives it, at least, is that if we have any hard evidence about this stuff, it's deep, deep in the bowels of the military industrial complex, and we're not allowed to access it. So that can't, by definition, count as public proof, because we can't see it in public. We can't see whatever craft they might have, or whatever radar data they're looking at, if they are looking at that stuff. And so we can't use it as proof.
Let me just pick up on that.
Great.
Hollywood has caused us to think in terms of very large spacecraft that come in and hover over the Earth and are scary. That's a huge expense in energy to send a very large spacecraft over interstellar distances and have it park at the Earth and do whatever it's going to do according to the movie. That's a very inefficient way to search. And it's only credible as the result of a non-conscious, what's the right word I'm looking for? If we have hard evidence of a phenomenon that doesn't fit anywhere else. We are studying extrasolar planets now in greater and greater detail. We're getting contents of atmospheres, which are a crucial part of the evolution of life. And someday we may find hard evidence that biology exists in its own way on at least one other world or one other civilization. And that would be a huge breakthrough, even though there are no intelligent beings talking to us. It suggests the beginning of the evolutionary process, which may have taken place in many places in the galaxy over the past 3 billion years. And I would pay attention to these findings, because they may lead us to find signs of life in a distant planet that we had not known of before. And that makes the SETI search a little bit more believable.
And the UFO search, I think.
Yeah, because you're saying that you have something that can evolve to intelligence, though it's not a sure thing. But if you winnow out all of these by how credible they are, we may still wind up with a limited number of sightings that there is real biology going on somewhere else. And we didn't put it there.
Yeah.
So,
even one. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Now you go ahead. Yeah, I think you're.
I was just going to say, even one sort of proof of concept that did exist would radically elevate our interest in the SETI search, and I think it, by extension, should naturally elevate our interest in the UFO search. Even though it wouldn't be directly connected, it would imply that it was at least possible that some technological beings could be visiting us. And I think we have a problem with humility, specifically on the UFO front. I think we do. I think we have a really hard time imagining that species have more advanced technology than us. Like, as you point out about radio, 100 years ago, we didn't know, or 150, something like that. We didn't know radio waves exist. We say dark energy and dark matter account for something like 96% of the known universe. That implies that there's a bunch of stuff we don't understand still. So there may be versions of radio waves that we just haven't found yet. We might be looking in just a tiny part of what we'll ultimately find is the broad spectrum of potential communication substrates. And I think we have a literally difficult time imagining a technology that we can't currently conceive. And then I think we have a kind of a chip on our shoulder about this being our planet and us dominate. We've dominated the rest of the natural world as we understand it so thoroughly that it's very difficult for us to intuit that something could stand in relation to us the way we stand in relation to the whales, which is to say so superior as to be borderline oblivious, like as to make the creatures we're surveilling borderline oblivious to our presence. So like that's how much we are superior to our next closest natural cousins. We can watch them in the wild in ways that they can't notice. Almost all though. And of course we interfere with their habitats routinely, which is another thing that maybe informs our intuitions about how more advanced beings would relate to us. We would expect them to come in and sort of steal our resources in ways that would be obvious to us and not just surveil us discreetly. But if they are surveilling us discreetly, it stands to reason that if they're more advanced than us, we may just not be very good at noticing that. And we might be starting right now to catch on a little bit. We might be at the very beginning of having good enough sensors and broadly distributed enough technology to start to notice that. So where I'd like to take this as a question for you is, if someday soon or eventually we get a piece of hard evidence from one of these organizations that's looking for UFOs, they get great video, they get great radar data, they get great sensor readings, and they go public and they say, look, we're looking at this thing. It's not a plane, it's not a bird, it's not a Superman. We think this is pretty clearly a non-human piece of technology. My question for you, as somebody who's thought deeply about diplomacy and international policy, is what do you think we should do about that if we get news of that kind?
Well, it will be hard to confine it to the scientific community. If it leaks, then it's going to be sensationalized, and that discourages good science. But it may be more subtle. It may not be an organized signal. It may just be something like a peculiar chemistry in an alien atmosphere, a sign of life. And scientists are actively looking for that. And the more they get the resources to run these programs, the more likely it is that they will find something. And I would not jump from there to a conclusion that intelligent beings exist on that planet.
But I agree. I'm sorry to interrupt. It is a big step. But the hypothetical I'd like to pick your brain on, because you've thought so deeply and so broadly about this subject, is what if we get really good evidence of non-human technology here? What if UAPX or Galileo shows us video of a craft and the US government and the Chinese and the Russians all say, this is not our craft. We don't know what it's doing, but we have great sensor data. As far as we can tell scientifically, we have basically hard evidence of a non-human technological presence on Earth. What should we do? One of the things your book is really great at is diving into the assumptions we make about how contact might go, about how they might want to interact with us. And so I'm curious about what you would expect from the behavior of these potential ET. And I'm curious about, as a diplomat, what you think we should do collectively. And I'll do this at the end, but I really want to nudge people toward your book. You have this great list of assumptions about what might happen after contact, which is that include things like the comprehensibility of their messages, that they'll understand science, that contact will unify us, that they'll be altruistic, that they speak as one, that they mean what they say, things like that. There are all these potential potentially incorrect assumptions about how extraterrestrials might behave that we need to think carefully about. And so I'm curious what you think we should do as a people if we do get some kind of smoking evidence about that links UFO reports to extraterrestrial intelligence. I recognize that we're not close to having such evidence, but I'm trying to get us to engage with this space because I think it's a genuine possibility that in the next 10 or 20 years we might get such evidence. And so I would love to hear your expert view on what we should do when we get that information, if we ever do.
I must respectfully point out that there is never an end to the scientific process because whatever good evidence we have today is going to be overpowered by evidence later. And I mean, just watch the changes in medicine alone, and microbiology and the manipulation of life. It's going to extend human lives. And nobody saw that coming 40 years ago. Anyway, to go back to your question, state it for me one more time so I get it answered right.
Yeah, that's a good idea because I went on a little too long there. If we find hard evidence linking UFO activity to some kind of non-human intelligence, what do you think we should do collectively to respond to that information?
Well, here we run into the problem of discipline because we can sign all kinds of treaties that say don't send a message back until we've had a chance to consider this. But at the same time, there will be people, as soon as certain people learn that there is an object or a signal that they can interact with, they'll go off on their own. You know, they won't allow anyone to stop them. And that part worries me because I would like to see us deal with this issue as an international community. And that means bringing organizations in from all over the world to get them to look at the evidence, which may take some time. And in the meantime, people who are not scientists will be spreading theories that may be completely off the wall. And that's what's going to get the headlines until we get real results from this international research. So I look at the new telescopes that we have just put up, not only the one you mentioned, but there's one out there that's the first big telescope dedicated to a female scientist.
The Vera Rubin.
Yeah, exactly.
The Vera C. Rubin, excuse me. I went to Vassar. I'm a big fan of Vassar girls, and the Vassar Observatory is called the Vera Rubin Observatory. So I'm very proud that the new one has to be called the Vera C. Rubin Observatory. She was also a Vassar girl, and I'm very proud of her work by extension. It reflects very well on me.
Okay, good.
I'm very excited about the Vera Rubin.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to discover, but the better the technologies are that we apply to the sky, the more we're going to discover. And some of it will be new. You know, we won't have a convenient pocket to put it in. At the same time, we have to recognize that the vast majority of stars and their accompanying planetary systems may never be the home of a technological civilization. It's going to be an exceptional event. And we are making ourselves essential by researching this the cosmos around us. We're going to turn up things we hadn't expected to find. I don't know if it will affect the dark matter, dark energy equations, but it will make a lot of people think more broadly. The thing I wanted to add on was look for artifacts as well as signals. And artifacts aren't necessarily functional. If some craft came and put itself into an orbit around the solar system where it could observe what was going on around all the planets and other bodies, it would have to wait a long, long time before they found any evidence that there was an intelligent civilization down there. Or if they did find it, the people at headquarters might say, let's just watch this and not interact. Yeah, it's a little bit Star Trekky, but it's a legitimate position. You can observe without interfering.
So I'm sensitive to your time now, but I'd love to ask you on our way out two things. One is if there's anything in this conversation space that you feel we haven't covered that is sort of covered that is burning a hole in your pocket, I'd love to hear it. And then two is how, if not, or additionally, what do you think our posture should be going forward in these years ahead? Should we be working to get better policy on an international level? Do we need more science, more collective action around this subject? Or do you think we're sort of heading on a good trajectory? So those are two kind of open-ended questions for you. Anything that we've generally missed here or something you'd like to highlight? And then what should be our posture going forward?
Yeah. Well, first, we should keep track of other countries, what they're doing in this field. There aren't many, but the Japanese intrigue me because they've been behind us on astronomy. It wasn't their chosen field of expertise, but they are beginning to take notice, and they could become an important player. That scene was used in a movie in which it was the Carl Sagan novel about contact, and there were people violently opposed to making this information known, and they destroyed the machine which would enable us to communicate with these strangers. And what happens is the Japanese pick up the burden and they say, we will quietly and not telling anybody build this machine ourselves.
Right.
Not going to wait for the rest of the world.
Right. I just reread Contact recently. I recommend it to people. It's a good read.
Yeah. What should our posture be toward this? It's hard to get everybody to be open-minded. The more evidence, the more knowledge of life and intelligence on our own planet that we publicize, the more opportunities there are to say, what if this happened on another world many light years away? and let that be the provocateur, the one who wants to bring out all the theories that sound reasonable. Um, we don't have a monopoly on knowledge. We never will. Let's be hopeful that a distant planet will either ignore us or contact us in a non-threatening way. But until then, support the search. Is relatively modest by the standards of modern technology, but they've been at it a long time, and they know how to play this game with real science. So let's recognize that real science has not yet proved the existence of ET. But there are lots of people searching, and maybe a different wavelength, it may be a different assumption about what extraterrestrial technology would be like. Are they going to use gravity waves? I don't know what's going to be sent our way.
Yeah.
And keep your mind open while recognizing some people have gone too far in their theories. I don't treat them with contempt. Some of them are honest people who just have been absorbed by the implications. But there are a lot of operators out there who will jump on any real evidence of this. And be skeptical of people who have no expertise, people who have no background in scientific research. Science can play a big role here, but science is going to demand good evidence. And searching for good evidence is the way ahead.
Well, thank you so much for contributing so thoughtfully to this conversation. I'm going to strongly recommend to anyone who's made it this far that they do pick up a copy of Contact with Alien Civilizations, Our Hopes and Fears About Encountering Extraterrestrials by Michael A.G. Michaud. And Michael, is there anything else that you would want people to engage with from your body of work? I know you've written many academic articles. I don't know if you have an online presence. Do you like people to reach out or read you in any particular place? Or would you say that book is the best spot for UFO enthusiasts to go engage with your thinking on the subject?
Yeah, well, it's a serious book. It is not an expose. It goes over hundreds of different cases that were related, not just UFOs I'm talking about, but the whole question of life.
Yeah, I should tell any UFO folks, UFOs are not the core focus of this book. It's like a broad intellectual engagement with the project of thinking about how we might relate to extraterrestrial civilizations, how that might go down, what they might be like. I still think UFO people would be very interested in that, but the analysis of the UFO evidence is a relatively small part of your work. So just to flag that for people.
Yeah. People will remain interested in the UFO issue, but the ultimate turning point is finding a form of evidence, and it may not be a radio signal. It could be, for example, finding a piece of dead alien technology lying on one of the bodies of our solar system. People who or other civilizations having researched nearby stars and their planets and left their explorers to run out of batteries or whatever it is they survive. You may find dead artifacts somewhere in the solar system. On the other hand, you may not.
And there is at least a chance that we might find some living ones floating around down here. So I'm crossing my fingers in the directions of the UFO researchers and hoping they come up with some good science and in the meantime get some good funding on their way to that work. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with as we tie a bow on this conversation today?
Yeah, it's a broader, almost political statement that
Great.
I was in the diplomatic business for 32 years, and I found that rational discussion supported by evidence was always the best way in the long term, instead of providing false information. And there's too much of that false information being spread by our own government. Let's be responsible and keep people's mind open and don't shut them down.
Well, thank you, Michael. I think you've been a great warrior in the project of opening people's minds and helping them consider fun, exotic possibilities. And I'm extremely grateful for you making the time to talk with me today. I've had a lot of fun, and I really admire your work. So thank you so much. I really appreciate our conversation.
Well, thank you. You've been a good questioner. You're very responsible and smart. So it was a pleasure talking to you.
And that's the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening or watching. If you like WTUFO and you want it to keep existing, support us at patreon.com/WTUFO or on YouTube or on Buzzsprout for as little as you want per month. Patreon or YouTube or Buzzsprout, this show is brought to you by you. So thank you very much for your support. I hope you keep listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.